Hi, welcome to Module 9. We're going to be talking about nuclear energy. This is moving into Chapter 14 content. We're going to talk about fusion. And to start out, nuclear energy, as far as producing electricity, can be seen as the great hope for energy independence for many nations that are highly driven towards electrical need within their power supply, such as the United States, where everybody expects to have power. It's not like it's an up and coming grid source, and so it's something that can produce a lot of power in small space. As far as material that we use uranium as our general power source for production of electricity. But plutonium can be used. I'm going to point that out because we'll talk about MOX fuels and mixed reactor cores, even though they're not legally allowed in the United States. They do exist in countries like Japan. But plutonium is hard to utilize. It produces a lot of energy, not electricity, a lot of energy, and therefore plutonium is often seen as a weapon grade based radiation material, where uranium is seen as something that can be more utilized within a commercial utility space. As far as brief history, the Nautilus is considered the first nuclear-powered sub, and that was in 1953. As far as nuclear power plants and electric grid supply in the United States, the first one was in 1957 in Shippingport, Pennsylvania. 3 Mile Island is the first reactor core meltdown issue that happened within the United States. There has been other nuclear power plants that had had problems prior to, and that happened in 1979. And the worst nuclear disaster on record was Chernobyl in 1986. As far as United States nuclear power plants, and this is material that I should really preface and say, please lean heavily on what I'm providing you, because I'm giving you the current numbers and data, and the book is already outdated on nuclear power plant numbers and such. And if I ask you about how many there are in the United States or things like that, those sorts of questions at any point in time, please reference the most current numbers. We want to be up to date and current, and kind of wax over that part in the material in the book that's already out of date. But as far as the United States has the world's largest production of nuclear power plants, we have the most power plants in the world. There are exactly 104 nuclear reactor cores in the United States, exactly 100 of them operational, but there are 104. 4 of them are still existent, and they're still running in the sense that they have holding pools and other things, and you'll see that information as we continue through these slides. There are 5 that are under construction, but the construction of those nuclear power plants in the United States keeps getting halted, and then it's active again, and then it's, so we'll see if any more come online. As far as how many have come online, the last one to come online came online in 2011, and that one was predated or set to come online way back in 1979, and that has to do with after the 3 Mile Island nuclear core meltdown, which was considered a safe handling, but it's up to opinion. If you lived in that community, it was a scary time. After that, no new leases or facilities were really allowed, and we have very strict laws in the United States allowing and not allowing nuclear power. Basically, there's been a 30-year period where we have seen no real new builds. And while there are some set to come online in 2020, we don't know if they'll actually get completed, because there's a lot of litigation that halts and a lot of catches with these new facilities, and there's all sorts of problems. And so it's a highly political action. It's a difficult one. It can be dangerous if done wrong. With that said, I don't want you to live in fear of a nuclear power plant. I want you to live educated. I want you to know how they work and why they work, and what to be scared of and what not to be scared of, so that we can have a well-educated discussion about how we provide power for ourselves. I know that was a wordy slide. Please just take your time, read through as needed. Nuclear power plants in the United States, as I said, there are 104, but at the time that we were building all these, which was between the 1950s and the late 1970s, they were all sanctioned to be built where there was the highest population of people, which were on the East Coast. And so 1/3 of all nuclear power plants are actually right up in the New England area. So right up here, housed around New York and Connecticut and Vermont, Massachusetts, and down in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, you can pretty much see like the DC, Maryland line on up is where most of them are. There are mostly on the East Coast, and there are a couple on the West Coast, and there's almost none where there's very few people in population. And there's multiple reasons for that. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC. Now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is the group or organization within the federal government that regulates all nuclear power within this country. It is a government entity. It is highly powerful in the sense that it's given a lot of oversight, and nuclear power is one of the most highly regulated forms of energy that we get on our electric bill. So it's pretty safe. It's a pretty regulated facility. It's one of the least dangerous jobs that you could have is working within the regulatory system. And so things to keep in mind. There are what's called smart nuclear reactor cores and mini nuclear reactor cores. Those are both not legally allowed in the United States. So in the US, we are allowed to build two types of reactor cores, and we have only two types of reactor cores. So all 104 reactor core systems, all 104 nuclear power plants in the United States are either pressure water reactors or boiling water reactors. There are benefits and downfalls to both, and we will talk more about that as we continue on. So as far as worldwide, there are a lot of other nuclear power systems. There are around 430 commercial nuclear power reactors in the world. There are 31 countries that are legally allowed to produce nuclear power. They provide about 11% of the world's electricity grid system. You can basically see there's some countries that are completely done with nuclear power and are phasing it out. So as these reactor cores come of age, they're just going to get rid of them. Like Sweden and Germany, they have voted to phase them out. So as they come of age. Places like Western Europe rely incredibly heavily on nuclear power. France gets most of its power from nuclear. It doesn't take up a lot of space and it doesn't require a lot of fuel. It's a really easy choice for a small country. As far as where everybody gets their power, this is the 2014 map of world nuclear power, and you can basically see who's got what and where. This is the breakdown within country to country. We have 104, so we got a really big, wide bubble, but it only provides about 20% of our energy needs, as you can see, where France, I believe they have 56. It's on one of the slides. They have like 56 power plants, and it provides over 75% of their electrical energy needs. Here's that list. So, 58. I was off by 2. So 58. Japan also has a very high number. So 54, Japan. So it's pretty much United States, France, Japan, and then Russia have the most in listing order of top 4. That brings us into fission of the molecules. And so we're going to talk about breaking down uranium and the different splittings. And this gets me into talking about nuclear fuel cycle. So we're going to start working on the nuclear fuel cycle itself. And we're going to start out by mining and creating that uranium that we need. And so right off the bat, the material that we're going to want to use to produce the electricity is to allow a nuclear reaction where I'm going to take the nucleus of the atom and actually split it into 2 separate atoms. And the material that I'm going to do that with is uranium, because it's easy for me to manipulate uranium. I can do it very easily by bombarding it with neutrons. So on that note, I'm going to pick up with a part video that's going to talk about nuclear fuel cycle.